Hello there and welcome to another Partners in Crime tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be showing how to make 2D elements in Blender. Now, 2D elements are used in a lot of basic and advanced motion graphics like kinetic typography and such. And once they're created, they can be appended to any Blender project. So, let's get started on making these fun animation additions in Blender. The first thing you want to do is delete the default cube by pressing X on your keyboard and then clicking delete. Next, you want to press numpad 1 to go into front view, and then bring the camera into front view by typing Control and then Alt, and then numpad 0 on your keyboard. Now, we're going to add our 2D element. So, we're going to be making a circle that sort of just grows around. So, we're going to add a circle. But before we add our circle, let's press Shift S and click cursor to center to make sure our cursor stays in the center of the screen. So go into the top left of the screen and click the Create tab, and under Curve click Circle, and let's rotate this circle so that it's facing us by typing R and then X and then type 90 on your keyboard and press Enter to confirm the rotation. Now let's add a plane. So just click Plane at the top left here. Rotate it so that it's facing us by typing R and then X and then 90. Press Enter to confirm the rotation. And press S and move your cursor in. Size that down. And left click to confirm the sizing. Now we're going to add a modifier that's going to make our plane curve around in a circle. But before we do that, we're going to go into edit mode and add a few more vertices to our plane. So press Tab and press W and click Subdivide and change the number of cuts to 10. Now hover your cursor in the center of the screen and press Tab, and let's add that curve modifier. So go into the right of the screen, click the Modifiers tab and click Add Modifier Curve, and click the object box here and select Bezier Circle. Okay, so now press SZ on your keyboard and move your cursor in. Size that down on the Z axis, make it a little thinner. Left click to confirm that sizing. And now we're going to start making our circle just grow around. So let's add an array modifier. Add modifier array and move it above the curve. And now if we adjust the count, you can see the circle just growing and then finishing. Okay, so pull the count down to 1, go to frame 0, and hover your cursor over the count box and press I on your keyboard. And I'll just insert a keyframe for that. And jump to frame 10. And now we're going to make the frame. We're going to make the count go with 10. Okay, so 10 on frame 10, and press I with your cursor hovered over that. So now on frame 10, little array up there. And so from frame 0 to frame 10, if you click play, you'll see we have a circle that grows in and connects there. So let's start adjusting materials. So we'll go into the Cycles Render Engine, click this box at the top here, and go into Cycles. And let's go into the Materials section and add a new material. And change the material from a diffuse to an emission material. And bump the strength up to 2. Now let's go into Render View to see how our scene looks. So you can see we've got a nice white circle element and we've got a gray background. So let's make the background a little bit more of a fun color. So we'll go into the world settings and let's make the color purple. So I'm going to pull up the brightness, make it purple, a little darker, like so. So that's looking pretty good. Let's go back into solid view, and as you can see from frame 0 to frame 10 our circle grows in, but we don't want to see any part of our circle before it starts to grow. So what we're going to do is jump to frame 1 and have your cursor in the center and press I and click scaling. So now it'll be this size around frame 1, and bring it back here to frame 0 and just S0 frame 0 and press enter, and then press I, and once this dialog pops up, click scaling. So now our plane just grows in there. Okay, so now we have a plane curving in a circle. So let's go to the second layer to add another 2D element. So click the second layer tab at the bottom of the screen here, and I'm going to pull the cursor back to the center, Shift S, cursor to center, and we're going to kind of make a firework element where we have a whole bunch of flowery kind of elements pop out and then disappear. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another bezier circle, Shift A, curve, circle. I'm going to rotate the circle so that it's facing us, typing R, X, 90, and press enter to confirm that rotation. And now we're just going to duplicate this circle, Shift D to duplicate it, and right click it. And now we're going to go into the curve object data tab and change the shape from 3D to 2D so our circle gets filled in there. And let's press SX on our keyboard, size that in, confirm that, and SZ, confirm that. So now we have a little bit of an ellipse here. So let's convert our object to a mesh and then curve it around the circle. So Alt C, mesh, and go to the modifiers tab, add modifier, curve, and select Bezier Circle 001. So now let's add an array modifier so that our object arrays in a circle. Click add modifier, array. I'm going to move it above the curve modifier by clicking this arrow here so that it applies the curve to the array. And change the offset on this, just pull, left click and pull that up. I'll make about 5 of these petal kind of elements there. Change the offset more, and that's looking pretty good. So now that we're finished making this element, let's hit apply, making the shape, apply. So let's animate this. So we're going to use shape keys to animate this. So let's go into the mesh data tab to the right of the screen here, and click this plus here to add a basis shape key, and click the plus again. And now let's start editing your object. So press tab to go into edit mode, and press A. That just selects all of our vertices, and press S0 and then enter on your keyboard, and then press tab. So that S0 is key 1, so it just scales our whole object down to nothing. So if we put the value of that key up, you can see our object is scaled down. If we put it down, it reverts back to the basis, which is the original shape of our object. So let's add in one more shape key. That's just going to have our object grow out and then disappear. So click this plus here, and press tab to go into edit mode again, and press S and move the object out. Left click to confirm that sizing. It's pretty good. And go down here and change the pivot point to individual origins. Now if you press S0 and press enter, we size them down to 0 respectively, these petals. Okay, so let's go back to object mode. You can either press tab on your keyboard or click object mode at the lower left of the screen here. And let's put the value of that up. You can see our object grows up and goes out. So let's jump back to frame 0 and start inserting some keyframes for our shape keys. jump to frame 0 there, and go to key 1. And since this is a key that makes our object size down to 0, we're going to have it a value of 1 on frame 0. And then a later frame will pull the value down so that our flower element just pops out. Okay, so 1, hover your cursor over that and press I on your keyboard. And then jump to frame 10 and pull the value down to 0. Hover your cursor over that and press I on your keyboard. And then jump to key 2, left click on key 2. And this is the key that sort of just makes our object come out and disappear. So I'm going to make it start working at around frame 8. We'll put the value at 0. And at frame 12, we'll put the value 1. So make sure you're on frame 12 and hover your cursor over the value box and press I. Rewind this, play it, and see how it looks. You can see we have our element popping out like so. Pause that. Might make the pop out start a little sooner. So go to frame 8, Alt-I and delete that keyframe. And we'll jump to frame 6 and pull the value to 0 on frame 6. I. And that inserts keyframe. Jump back to frame 0 and play this. So now our firework element just pops out more uniformly. Okay, pause that. So let's add in a material for our element. So go into the material section and click new to add a new material and change the material to an emission material and change the strength to 2. Now you want to click the color box and we're going to make our material green. So pull that over to green and let's set this to rendered view. If you scroll down to zoom out, see we have a nice green element just popping out. So we created 2 elements so far, so let's make some more. Go into solid view and we're just going to make some diamonds that are going to come out, some rhombuses that are just going to come out and then pop back in. So let's jump to frame 3 and start making those objects. So click the third layer tab at the bottom of the screen here. Press Shift S and click cursor to center. Make sure we keep our cursor in the center because if we add any new objects, they'll be added wherever the cursor is. So let's add in a curve. So go to the left of the screen here and click bezier. Add a bezier curve. Rotate it 90 degrees on the x-axis by typing RX90 on your keyboard and press enter to confirm the rotation. Now press tab to go into edit mode and press V, and once this dialog pops up, click vector and this will just make our curve straight. Now let's right click on this corner here. We're going to start shaping this to be a square. So type E and then Z and then 2. That just extrudes that area 2 points on the Z axis and press enter. We're just going to keep going around. EX2, enter, and then EZ -2, enter, and hold down shift and right click this right here, press Alt C, and that'll just connect our square. So press tab to exit edit mode and then press shift control Alt C. Okay, and once that pops up, click origin to center of mass. Now this looks like it's moved up about 1 on the Z axis, so GZ -1, so we can have that centered in the screen. And press enter to confirm that. So now let's fill in our currently a square. So go into the curve object data tab and change the shape to 2D. now we're going to set the pivot point to the bounding box center. Okay, now press tab to go into edit mode, and now we're going to press A to deselect that corner there, and A to select everything here, and then press Shift D to duplicate all of those corners. Right click and then S and move your cursor in and size that in. Now we have a nice kind of picture frame square there. So left click to confirm that. Now press A to deselect and A to select again, and type RY45. Okay, and press enter. Now let's press tab to exit edit mode, and we have a nice rhombus. So now that we've got that added there, we're going to add a material to it before duplicating it and then animating it. So let's add a material to it. Go into the material section, add a new material, and just make this an emission material. Change the strength to 2. And I'm going to make it red orange. Okay. So let's change this to render view to see how our object looks. Okay, so that looks like a pretty nice 2D element right there. So let's go back into solid view and start animating. Okay, so let's first Shift D this object, right click, and S, size that up so we get another rhombus. Left click to confirm that. Then press Shift D again, right click to cancel that movement, and then press S and move your cursor out, and left click to confirm that. Now press Shift A, and we're going to add an object that's going to control the scaling and the location of our 3 rhombus objects. So add empty plane axis. And now that that's added, let's right click on one of our rhombus objects, B, and box select. Left click and drag a box over all 3 of these objects, and then hold down Shift and right click on the empty, and then press Ctrl P on your keyboard, and once this dialog pops up, click Object. Okay, so now if you right click on the parent and just move it around, you can see it moves around all of our rhombus objects. So right click to cancel that movement, and let's start animating. So let's go to frame 10 and insert a keyframe for the scaling. So type I on your keyboard, and once this dialog pops up, click Scaling. Now let's jump to frame 0 and type S0 and press enter, and then have our cursor over here and press I, scaling. Now from frame 0 to 10, our rhombus object should just pop in, so play, pause that, and frame 10 to 13, we'll make our rhombus objects get bigger, so S, move your cursor out, and left click, and press I, and scaling. And from frame 0 to 10, it'll get bigger. And from frame 10 to 15, let's make it pop back in. So S0, enter, and then press I. And once this dialog pops up, click Scaling. So now if we rewind and play this whole thing through, our rhombus objects come up and then jerk back in. Okay, so let's pause that. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now we're going to use an add-on to kind of offset the animation of our rhombus objects. Now the add-on's name is Commotion, and you're going to have to install this add-on if you don't already have it in Blender. So to do that, you would go to the link we'll leave in the description and download the 7-zip file, the zip file, and you would go to the user preferences in Blender and make sure you're in the add-on section and click that box there and type commotion. Make sure that's checked and click save user settings and then go back into 3D view. Now what we're going to do is right click on one of our rhombus objects, press B, left click and box select over all of these objects, and then in the transform section we'll make the offset factor to 4, press enter, and then click offset slow parent. So if we rewind this and click play, you can see we've got a pretty nice animation. Okay, some of our objects have slowed down and it's got more of a kinetic or motion typography kind of vibe. So let's pause this, rewind. You can see how commotion works there. So that looks pretty good. Now we switch this to render view. It's looking pretty good. Now we're going to make a different kind of object. So let's go back into solid view and we're going to make 2 more elements. The next element we're going to make, let's see, we're going to make an array of circles come out and then disappear. So let's jump to frame 4, layer 4. Just click the 4th layer tab at the bottom of the screen here, and under curve click circle, RX90 on your keyboard to rotate that towards us, and enter. And we're going to fill this circle in. So curve object data tab, 2D, S, and move the cursor in, left click to confirm that. And let's convert our circle to a mesh. So Alt C, mesh, and let's scroll up to zoom in here. Let's press tab on our keyboard and A. We're just gonna duplicate this a few times and randomize the size. So Shift D, left click and size that down. Shift D, size that down. Size this one up. We're going to give them all random size. Shift D, left click, move that down. And just repeat this process. Just randomize it. Shift D, left click, size. Shift D. Shift D. And once you're done, just press tab to exit edit mode. And now let's animate this. So let's first add a shape key. Click this plus to add the basis shape key if you're in the mesh data section. First tab to go into edit mode, and looking pretty good. A, and tab to exit text edit mode, and click this plus again, and now we can make a shape key. So we press tab to go into edit mode, press S. That will all size in on each other there, but we wanted to size out from the cursor here, so let's set the pivot point to the 3D cursor. So you can see it sizes out there. Okay, so on frame 0, I'm gonna press S0, enter, press tab. So now our key will have our objects pop out from there if we adjust the value. And let's add another shape key. So click plus here, press tab to go into edit mode, and we're going to make it come out and disappear, similar to the way we did with the flower fireworks element. So press S, move your cursor out, and left click, and then set the pivot point to individual origins, and press S0 and enter. Then press tab to exit edit mode. So key 2 should make those objects come out and disappear now. And key 1, if we adjust the value, should make the objects pop out. So let's insert a keyframe. Bring the value up to 1 on frame 0. Hover your cursor over the value box and press I. And then jump to a later frame. We'll go with frame 10. Pull the value down and hover your cursor over this and press I. Let's go to key 2 and bring the value up. Okay, we'll leave it at 0 and we'll make it go to frame 7 or 8 and make the value 0 here. Hover your cursor over the box and type I, and then go to frame 14 and bring the value up to 1. Hover your cursor over that and press I. So now if you rewind this and then play it, we have a nice element that comes out and then disappears. So we've got 2D bubbles. Pause that and rewind. Drag this along here. So now we can, let's see, go into the material section and add a new material for this. Make it an emission material and make the color green. Well, make the color light blue and change the strength to 2. Now let's set this to render view to see how it looks. So we've got some nice blue 2D bubbles. So let's go back into solid view and let's add in our last element that we'll be creating for this tutorial. And we're just going to make multicolored rectangles come in from the side and then come out of camera view. So to do that, let's go into the 5th layer by left clicking the 5th layer at the lower part of the screen here. Make sure your cursor is in the center. So Shift S, cursor to center. And now let's add in a plane. So click plane to add a plane. RX90 to rotate it so that it's facing, and press tab. We're just going to size it up on the Z axis. So SZ, move your cursor out. Left click to confirm the sizing. SX, size it in, make the plane a little skinnier. And left click to confirm the sizing. So now let's add in a new material. So click new and change the material to emission and change the emission strength to 2. Press enter. And now let's add in an array modifier. So in the modifier section, you want to click that and click add modifier, click array, and just change the offset, and we'll change the count to 7. Okay, so now we have 7 different rectangles. But if we were to press G and move them around a bit, you'd see they're all one object. So we're going to have to separate them. So right click to cancel that movement. We're going to hit apply on this array modifier, and then we're going to separate our rectangles. So press tab and press P. And once the separate dialog pops up, click by loose parts. Now if we press tab to exit edit mode and right click, we can see that our planes, our rectangles, are each separate objects. So let's go to render viewport shading. So we want to give all of our rectangles different materials or different colors. Okay, so let's pull this dialog up. Now if we want to give them different colors without having them each have a different material, let's go into the node editor. Make sure you have one of your planes selected by right clicking it. And we're going to do Shift B to just have a render border on the scene, and left click and box select over this. Scroll up to zoom in and use your middle mouse button to pan around and click Add, Color, use Saturation Value. And just hook the hue, the color output, to the emission node's input, and let's make the color green. So now all of our rectangles have a green color. Use the middle mouse button to pan around. So let's add in an object info node. So click Add and put object info, and let's hook the random output to the hue. And now you can see all of our rectangles have different colors, or most of them. So press numpad 0 to go back into camera view. So that's looking pretty good. Now about this random color material, you can apply it to any object. You can put it on any of the elements in our scene by simply going to the material section and just selecting it with one of your elements selected. So let's name our material random color material. So click this box here and type random color material. Okay, so now we know this material is our random color material. So go to solid shading in the viewport, and let's start animating our planes. So Shift A, and once the add dialog pops up, go to empty and click plane axis, and just pull this to the side here. Scroll down to zoom out. We're going to right click on one of our planes, be the box select, left click and drag a box over all our plane objects, and then hold down Shift and right click on the empty. Press Ctrl P, and once that dialog pops up, click Object, scroll up to zoom in, and right click on the empty we've added. You can see it controls the location and the scaling of our rectangles. Okay, so let's start animating it. So we're going to make it come in from this side and then past the camera. So let's jump to frame 0, GX, and move these planes all the way back here. Left click from that, press I, and then once this dialog pops up for the insert keyframes, click location rotation and jump to frame 17 and pull this on the x-axis. GX, pull it over there, past the camera, left click, and I. And once that dialog pops up, click location rotation. So if we jump back to our frame 0 and click play, we have our plane objects passing the camera. But they're passing over the camera pretty fast, so let's press pause. We want to pull this keyframe out, our last keyframe out, to kind of extend the animation. And so we don't have to delete the keyframe and re-insert it. Let's go into the dope sheet. Right click on the latest keyframe, and you want to make sure you click the cursor here so you make sure the keyframes are for the object you have selected. And just pull the keyframe out. We'll make it about 10 frames longer, so 30. Left click there. And rewind and play this. You can see our animation lasts a little bit longer. Still a little fast, so I'm going to just type GX5 with the latest keyframe selected and press enter. Rewind and play it. Well, that's pretty much good. Let's rewind to the beginning and right click over one of these rectangles and B, box select over all of them, and then click offset slow parent. Click play, and you can see the rectangles pass over each other as they pass the camera as well. Scroll up to zoom in and rewind. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Go into render view. You can see we have our multicolored planes passing over the camera there. So let's go back into solid view, and now that we've finished making our 2D elements, let's make them into groups so that we can just append them whenever we need them in a 2D project. So let's go to the first layer, right click on our circle, scroll up to zoom in, and B, and box select over the circle, and press Ctrl G on your keyboard, and click this here, and we're going to name our group 2D circle animation. We'll click on that, go to the next frame, and see, this is our firework animation. So let's right click on this, let's go to zoom in, and B, and Control G, and name this group firework flower element. Go to layer 3, and B, box select over all of this, Control G, name this group, let's see, rhombus animated group. Okay, so that's looking good. Go to layer 4, A, this selects everything in the layer, and I think we got one object here, so we can just go to the object data tab and name this 2D bubbles. We can still group the object, Control G, and name it 2D bubbles. And let's go to our final layer. Left click on the 5th layer, scroll down to zoom out, and type A on your keyboard to just select everything in the layer, and then press Control G, and we'll name our last group multicolored animated rectangles. Left click there, and now we've finished creating and naming all of our elements. So let's press Ctrl Alt B, clear the render border. Now that we've made all of our elements into groups, if we're working on another 2D Blender file, we can easily append these elements by pressing File and then Append. And let's just select the random Blender file we have here. And you would select our 2D element Blender file here. And if your Blend file has a group in it, like the 2D elements file, you would click a group folder and then select whatever the name of the group you're working on is. Okay, so let's say you wanted to append your firework flower group, you would click the group folder and then click firework flower group. Okay, and you would do the same with any of your other 2D elements. So let's just click cancel here, and now that we're done making the elements, you're going to save your file, save as, and just choose a folder on your computer to save it to. So you can also go into the render section here if you wanted to render your 2D elements out, to say using After Effects or video sequence editor. You go to the render tab and you would bring the resolution to 100% and choose a codec that's compatible with any media player you've got. So video, Xvid, encoding, and change the format to H.264. That's what's compatible with our media players, 14,000 bit rate. And if you have any audio in your file, you can select MP3 as your audio codec, and you just choose a folder on your computer to save your file to. But for now, appending from project to project, you would use the append group method. So now that we're finished making these elements, they can be appended and linked to any Blender project or animation. So thanks for watching. We hope you learned a lot from this, and if you did, leave a like and a comment below. And you can subscribe for more tutorials, intro templates, and more from partners in coordinated rendering of ideas, motion, and effects.